In the summer of 2018, an insatiable curiosity drove my group of friends and me to seek out the legendary Moonlit Lake, a name whispered in hushed tones among those who knew of its sinister reputation. Deep in the wilderness of northern Oregon, this remote and secluded haven beckoned to us, its ominous allure drawing us into a web of horror that we could never have imagined. Our journey commenced under the unforgiving sun of a cloudless Friday morning. We packed our gear, loaded our provisions, and embarked on a treacherous drive that would test the limits of our determination. The dirt roads twisted and turned, weaving an intricate path deeper into the heart of the forest, erasing all signs of civilization. As the sun sank behind a curtain of towering pines, we arrived at the desolate lake's edge, shrouded in unsettling silence. Camping by the water, we constructed a blazing fire, its warmth offering some semblance of comfort in the growing darkness. The woods surrounding us awakened with rustling leaves, eerie whispers, and distant, mournful howls that sent shivers down our spines. We dismissed these unsettling sounds as the musings of an untamed wilderness and plunged into a night of ghost stories, hoping to summon the thrill of fear. As midnight approached, a dense, clammy fog crept in from all sides, encircling our campsite like a malevolent specter. We cast our wary gazes toward the lake, its placid surface now masked by an ethereal mist. Bizarre ripples disturbed the water, originating from some unseen source beneath the inky depths. At first, we rationalized it as the antics of a passing school of fish, but the ripples grew larger and more purposeful, forming intricate patterns that defied natural explanation. With trepidation, we armed ourselves with flashlights and cautiously approached the lakeshore. What we beheld was a vision from the darkest recesses of our nightmares. Emerging from the lake's abyss were ghostly apparitions, clad in tattered garb and moving in a surreal, synchronized dance. Their skeletal faces contorted in agony, their eyes vacant voids that seemed to consume our very souls. Silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the muffled gasps escaping our trembling lips. The ghostly figures remained oblivious to our presence, their spectral waltz continuing. Then, Mark, unable to contain his mounting terror, screamed in desperation. The figures turned as one, their hollow eyes locking onto Mark with a malevolent hunger. In response to Mark's scream, a cacophony of tormented whispers filled the air, a macabre symphony of suffering and despair that pierced our eardrums and settled deep within our psyche. Mark staggered backward, clutching his head as if trying to escape the haunting voices, and the spectral dancers quickened their approach. In sheer panic, we grabbed Mark and fled our campsite, leaving behind our possessions and the cursed procession. We ran blindly through the darkened woods, our frenzied breaths and the ghostly murmurs reverberating in our minds. It felt like an eternity before we reached our car, our sanity hanging by a thread. We sped away from Moonlit Lake, leaving the cursed place behind. Mark, however, would never escape its grasp. Nightmares plagued him relentlessly, and he withdrew from society, haunted by the memory of those ghostly figures and their mournful whispers. To this day, Moonlit Lake remains an accursed place in our memories, a forbidden realm of darkness and terror that defies explanation. We warn anyone who might be tempted by its alluring beauty. Stay far away, for its depths hold a malevolence that no campfire can dispel, and its haunting specters still dance in the shadows of our minds. In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains lay Blackthorne Hollow, a place whispered about in hushed tones among locals. The tale was that of a cursed forest, its depths concealing an ancient evil that preyed upon unsuspecting travelers. Eager to test our mettle, my friends and I embarked on a camping trip into these very woods during the summer of 2019. Little did we know that we were about to become part of a terrifying legend ourselves. Our group consisted of 5 brave souls: John, Emily, Chris, Sarah, and myself. Alex, armed with tents, provisions, and a thirst for adventure, we trekked into the heart of Blackthorne Hollow. The forest was dense, the trees towering high above us, and a palpable unease hung in the air, making our laughter feel hollow. We set up camp in a small clearing, our fire crackling and casting eerie shadows on the gnarled trees that surrounded us. As darkness descended, the woods came alive with strange sounds, whispers that seemed to emanate from the very trees themselves. We attributed it to the wind, though it was far too calm for such rustling. The night progressed with eerie tales and nervous laughter, but the sense of unease lingered. Hours passed, and as the clock neared midnight, the forest fell into an eerie silence. The crackling fire seemed muted, and the moonlight filtering through the leaves took on an eerie, otherworldly glow. That's when we heard it, a distant, haunting melody that seemed to emanate from deep within the woods. The tune was hauntingly beautiful, yet filled with an indescribable sorrow. We followed the sound, drawn deeper into the forest by an irresistible, otherworldly force. As we ventured further, the trees around us took on a sinister, contorted appearance. The melody grew louder, and with each step, it seemed to envelop us, as if the very air resonated with its ethereal notes. Our faces were pale with fear, yet we pressed on. Eventually, we entered a clearing, bathed in an eerie, bluish light. At its center stood an ancient oak tree, its branches gnarled and twisted. Beneath it was an old, weathered gravestone that bore the name Eleanor Blackthorne and the inscription, "Beware the Song of the Hollow." The melody now emanated from the tree itself, and we watched in horror as spectral figures emerged from its branches. They were ethereal, their features indistinct, but their eyes glowed with an unnatural, malevolent light. With every note of the haunting song, they swayed in a macabre dance, beckoning us to join them. Fear had paralyzed us, yet one by one, we began to move toward the tree. It was as though some invisible hand controlled us, drawing us closer to the source of the haunting melody. We couldn't resist. The compulsion was overpowering. Sarah, her eyes wide with terror, suddenly broke free from the trance, her voice piercing through the spectral song. She shouted at us to resist, to fight the unnatural compulsion. Her words broke the spell, snapping us out of the trance just as we reached the tree's gnarled roots. With newfound strength, we turned and fled from the clearing, leaving behind the haunting melody and the spectral figures. The forest seemed to fight us, the trees twisting and reaching out as if to ensnare us, but we pushed through, guided by Sarah's voice. We eventually stumbled back to our campsite, panting and disheveled. The whispers in the woods had intensified, their voices filled with anger and frustration, but they couldn't reach us. We huddled around the dwindling fire, clutching our flashlights like lifelines. The night wore on, the eerie sounds in the forest gradually subsiding. We dared not speak of what had transpired, fearing that to utter the memory would summon it back. As dawn broke, we packed our gear and left Blackthorne Hollow, vowing never to return. To this day, we are haunted by the memory of that night, the haunting melody, the spectral figures, and the sinister compulsion that almost claimed us. We warn others against venturing into the whispering woods of Blackthorne Hollow, for the ancient evil that dwells there is very real, and it preys upon the curious and the foolish, luring them deeper into the darkness with its eerie song. In the bleak shadow of a world grappling with an ever-deepening sense of isolation, my group of friends decided to seek refuge in the wilderness last year. We yearned for an escape from the chaos and uncertainty that had gripped our lives, and our choice led us down a sinister path into a remote and undisclosed forest, deep within the hinterlands. Little did we know that our retreat into nature would become descent into terror that would haunt us to our core. Our party comprised 5 individuals, their faces etched with the weariness of the times, each harboring a desperate need for solitude among the towering trees, with backpacks filled with provisions, tents, and a thirst for adventure. We ventured far into the wilderness, following a fading trail that seemed determined to lead us into the heart of darkness. Setting up camp in a small clearing, we were greeted by an oppressive silence, a silence that seemed to mock the usual sounds of nature, leaving only a void. Our isolation felt unnatural, and yet we embraced it, seeking respite from the tumultuous world outside. The first night passed without incident, shrouded in the warm glow of a crackling campfire. We roasted marshmallows and shared stories under the sprawling canopy of the forest. But little did we know that the camaraderie that had once bound us would soon be shattered by the horrors lurking in the depths of the woods. On the second night, an unshakable unease descended upon our camp. The fire's warmth no longer provided solace, and the forest's towering sentinels seemed to inch closer, their presence an ever-encroaching threat. It was then that we began to hear them, the whispers. Soft and insidious, the whispers emerged from the depths of the forest, their words like a malevolent symphony, barely audible yet impossible to ignore. We attributed the eerie sounds to the wind rustling through the leaves, or the cries of nocturnal creatures. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew stronger, weaving themselves into our consciousness. Unable to resist their pull any longer, we ventured into the moonlit woods, clutching our flashlights like lifelines, in search of the origin of the unnerving voices. Our beams revealed nothing but the tangled undergrowth and the gnarled branches of trees. The whispers, however, remained elusive, seeming to emanate from all directions, as if the forest itself had become an entity that conspired against us. The messages concealed within the whispers were cryptic and unsettling. They spoke of ancient secrets buried beneath the roots of ancient trees, of forgotten sins that haunted the forest's very soul, and of impending doom that loomed over us like a dark cloud. Fear wormed its way into our hearts as we listened, each word sending chills down our spines. As the night deepened, an eerie mist enveloped us, reducing visibility to mere inches. Panic set in as we realized we were separated and disoriented. Desperate cries for help echoed through the fog, but the mist swallowed our voices, leaving us utterly alone. In the heart of the oppressive fog, each of us faced our own personal nightmares. Shadowy figures flitted at the edge of our vision, just beyond the reach of our flashlights. Others felt icy, skeletal fingers brush against their flesh. The whispers grew more frenzied and insistent, like the sinister chants of an eldritch ritual. Hours later, the first pale light of dawn crept through the lingering fog. We stumbled back to our campsite, drained and traumatized. The whispers, now fading, left behind an indelible sense of dread that would never truly depart. We hastily packed our belongings and fled the forest, never daring to look back. To this day, the memories of that night remain etched in our souls, a haunting symphony of inexplicable whispers, an oppressive fog, and the overwhelming sensation of imminent doom. We swore never to return to that wretched place, and we never speak of the terrors we experienced in the haunted woods. It stands as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most horrifying horrors are not confined to the realms of fiction, but lurk in the impenetrable mysteries of the natural world, waiting to ensnare those who dare to tread upon their darkened path.